everybody. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the chapter number 14 of the book Songs and Lovers. This chapter is called The Release. One evening, Paul was in shift and he saw Dr. Ansel. And Dr. Ansel told him that they have in the fever hospital a man called Dawes that came from Nottingham. And Paul exclaimed, "Baxter Dawes?" "Yes," said the doctor, "that's the man." He asked him, "Do you know him?" And Paul said that he used to work in the place he was. And Paul did not know anything about his home circumstances, but he knew that he was separated from his wife, so he was a little bit down. And Paul told the doctor that he should say Dawes that he wanted to see him. And the next time Paul saw the doctor, he asked him about Dawes. And the doctor said that he told Dawes about a man called Morel, and that he just looked at him as he had jumped to his throat, and he was just sulking there. So Morel went to see Dawes in the hospital with Dr. Ansel's car, and the nurse told Dawes that he should show some manners because a gentleman wanted to see him. Dawes was just lying in the bed, sulking every time. With his dark eyes, he looked at Morel, and his look was like full of hate, mystery, and fear. And he looked like thinner and handsome again, but he was just there in the bed. When Paul get to Dawes, he asked him, "Have you had a bad time?" But Dawes didn't answer. He just looked at him. And then he spoke and he asked Morel what was he doing in Sheffield. So Morel told him that his mother was taken ill and they wanted to take her home as soon as possible because she has gotten cancer. So there he saw Dr. Ansel, and Dr. Ansel told him that he was there. But Dawes didn't answer anymore. So Paul left, but before he left the coin in the table. Morel didn't tell anything to his mother about Dawes, but he spoke to Clara. They didn't used to go so often, but that day they went to the castle grounds. And Morel said, "Did you know that Baxter is in the hospital with typhoid?" And Clara just looked at him like surprised and pale, and she said, "No." And Paul said, "Yes, the doctor said that he's getting better." But that affected Clara, and she started to change. Since that moment, Clara was like taking distance from Paul, and every time they go walking, she just disengaged her arm from him. And Paul noticed that because one day he put his arm around her shoulder and she just said, "Don't," and disengaged his arm from her. So Paul noticed that she was different since he gave that notice. And one day he said, "Is it Baxter that upsets you, right?" And she said, "I have been so bad with him and I treat him badly." And she added, and you have treated me badly too. And Paul said, how I treat you badly? And she said, yes, you did. And she said that Baxter had loved her 1,000 times better than Paul ever did. So Paul just said, all right, and he left her. He had better things to think of, more problems to think of, so he left her. The next day, Clara went to Sheffield to see her husband, but it was not a success. However, she left roses, fruits, and some money. She wanted to humble herself to him. She did not love him anymore. In her heart, there was no more love to Baxter, but she felt bad and she wanted to be like a self-sacrificial. After all, Morel didn't really love her, so she wanted to do penance. She wanted to humble, but there was still a great distance between the two of them. Morel went to see those once or twice. There was sort of a particular friendship between the two men, but they didn't mention the woman that was between them. Meanwhile, Mrs. Morel was gradually getting worse, and her sons decided to take special care of her. All the mornings, Morel went to her bed and asked her, did you sleep well? He did it with such tenderness, and she answered, yes, I did sleep well, but he knew it was a lie. He spent the whole day conscious of nothing but her. When he got home, one day, he didn't see her downstairs, so he went to her bed and he asked her, why didn't you get up? And she said that it was because of the morphine, that she received too much, and that made her body felt like ash, so she couldn't get up. And sometimes Miss Morel was like happy, and she started thinking of all the places she has visited, and she was really happy. But suddenly, she didn't speak no word anymore until next day she was normal again. During this situation, Morel didn't visit Clara so often, and when he did it, she was like cold with him. She felt afraid of him, and there was like something unnatural on Morel that she felt and that frightened her. There was like something sinister in his personality that filled her with horror. In the beginning of November, Clara reminded Paul that it was her birthday. But Paul had forgotten it. But he took her to the seaside, and they spent the weekend there. It was cold, and she was waiting for him to be warm with her. But she seemed like if he didn't care of her. He was just sat in the railway of the carriage, just looking out, nothing. He was like lost. And it was because of his mother's situation. So Clara went across him and spoke to him, but he didn't say anything. He was like lost, and he just held her hand without speaking or even thinking. For her, it was comforting, but she didn't felt it like comforting because she knew that he was not with her. And then in the evening, they went to sit down between the sandhills without talking or anything, and she felt uncomfortable. And then he started to talk about his mother. He said that she will never give in, that she was going to live, that she couldn't die, and talking about his mother. And she felt that uncomfortable, and she felt afraid to speak about anything to him because he was just talking about his mother. And she felt like she wanted to run away, but she couldn't because all the land was dark and she couldn't run away. And she felt it like if he wasn't even conscious of her existence, and that frightened her. And she started to dislike him. On Monday, Paul went to see Baxter, and he brought him some sweets. Paul asked about his mother, and Paul said that there was any difference in her, that she was getting worse. Also, he told Baxter that he and Clara went to Skelnes for the weekend. That was the first time that they mentioned Clara in a conversation. And that night of Monday, Paul decided to walk from Nottingham to have something to do. As he was walking, he started to feel like out of life, like everything was like unreal, and he felt like dazed. But he didn't care about that. When he was near home, he saw in the window of his mother's bedroom, he saw a firelight. And he thought, when she's dead, that light will get off. And he started to think about that. The days passed, and he hardly ever went to see Clara. Even Miriam wrote him, and he decided to go to see her. When Miriam saw him, she felt pity because of his appearance. He looked white and gaunt, and she asked him about his mother, and he said that the doctor said that she wouldn't last many days, but he was sure that she would do it, and she will be with them at Christmas. And Miriam felt so sorry for him, and she hugged him and kissed him, and she felt really pity for him. The days passed, December came, and Mrs. Morel was getting even worse, and they couldn't afford a nurse, so Annie decided to look after his mother. His mother was really, really bad, and they thought that she wouldn't last more. And the doctor said that those were the last days of her. And Morel felt really destroyed. One day, the doctor went to see her, and she said that she wouldn't last more days. And she went through the countries and through the woods, thinking of that. That day was the last of his mother, and he couldn't bear that. But the days passed, and Christmas was near. And Mrs. Morel was still alive, as he said, and there was a lot of snow, and she was alive, and they were taking care of her. But Annie and him felt like they couldn't couldn't go on more bearing that situation. So they started to plan that they were going to give their mother an overdose of morphine. So they knew that that made her feel bad. So that was the plan, to give their mother an overdose of morphine.